Hey, bestie. Have you ever looked around your life and wondered, is this even me? Like, you're playing a part in a movie that someone else cast you in. Maybe you wear the title of mom, therapist, teacher, friend, but underneath all of those roles, do you actually know who you are? Today, we're going to dive into a conversation that changed my life, and I know that it can change yours too. Today, we're talking about your identity, not your labels, not your roles, not who the world told you to be, but the real, deep, messy, beautiful you that's ready to come alive. So, if you've ever felt like you've been shape shifting to survive, if you've ever felt out of alignment, or if you've just wondered, who am I really? You're in the right place. So, let's talk about how to peel back those layers and rewrite the story and really build this new identity that actually fits. I'm going to talk about why this is important, and I want to start with this. This is so important that I made it the very first chapter of my book. I made identity the very first chapter of my book. If you didn't know, I'm writing a book. And it's something that I'm really excited about. And Lord willing, it is going to come out on my birthday in September. I still have a lot to do to make that happen, but that's my goal. We'll see what happens. Sometimes life throws things at us along the way, but my intention is for my birthday that it's going to drop. So, identity. The reason we even care about identity is because identity is the root system of your life. Your identity determines how you think, feel, and show up. And most people, well, they're living an identity that they didn't even consciously choose. Sometimes it's inherited from childhood, shaped by trauma, molded by the need to be accepted. And what's interesting is that positive psychology research tells us that identity, especially a coherent, meaning that we can tell it clearly, and a hopeful one, is directly connected to well being, motivation, and resilience. I know that you're my bestie if you're like, I could use more well being, motivation, and resilience, because I know that I could. I guess resilience shows up in the face of resistance sometimes. So, if you don't pause to evaluate and define who you are, your life will, hear me, your life will reflect who you've been told to be. And that disconnection between the real you and the roles you play, well, that's where burnout, anxiety, this feeling of off starts to creep in. In NLP, we call this incongruence, where our behaviors don't quite match up with our inner values or sense of self. And incongruence is emotionally expensive. And friend, you know what I'm talking about if you felt this. I know that I have felt this in my life. I tell on myself quite a bit in my book of different stories. And here's the truth, though. Here's the good news. You can change it. You, friend, can reauthor your identity. And when you do, you'll start seeing everything else shift with it because our identity guides everything else. So let's break down what this is, what it isn't. Your identity is not your resume. It's not your trauma, even though the cultural climate that we live in really does want to define us by trauma. We, I, I I really, I'm on social media. I'm obviously in the mental health field, and I really do appreciate accounts that talk about trauma. But what I also find, especially if I begin to read the comments, is that there are people that have identified with their trauma. Their trauma has become who they are, how they exist in the world, how they even how they lead in explaining to people who they are. But Friend, our identity is not what happened to us. It's not what happened to you. It's not even the roles that you play, even though the roles that we play into our identity. Your true identity, who you really are, is something deeper. It's this combination of your values, your beliefs, your self concept, meaning how you see yourself, and the narrative you tell about yourself. And sometimes we tell that narrative to others, and sometimes it's just something that we keep telling ourselves. It's what you believe is possible for you. Again, it is how you talk to yourself when no one is watching. And here's this powerful concept from Stoicism and also neuroscience. Right? You ready for this? You don't have to stay who you've always been. The Stoics taught us that identity is anchored in virtues like courage, self discipline, justice, wisdom, not titles, not approval, not image. And NLP, which you hear me talk about often, teaches that identity is part of the neurological levels of change. So it's just above values and beliefs and just below purpose. Meaning, when you shift your identity, everything else from your habits to your environment starts to shift too. I want you to really get the gravity of that. When you shift your identity, everything else from your habits to your environment starts to shift too. This is why, personally, I am not a fan of people identifying as an ex smoker, a recovering alcoholic. Now, there's truth in there's power in ownership. But when smoker is a part of my identity, when even if we even if we tack on recovering, alcoholic is a part of my identity, what happens is that's still a part of my identity. When you're counting, and by the way, there's power in this. So please, if you're like, Dr. Britt, this is crap. Like, I'm so proud that I am 6 months sober. I am so proud of that I haven't done whatever in X amount of time. I support you. But what I want you to hear me is when we start to identify and still identify as alcoholic or a girl that eh, leaves my heart on my sleeve or uh, used to be a perfectionist. Well, that's true. Like I would say that about myself. I was once a perfectionist, but I'm not a recovering perfectionist. I don't want that in my definition of me in any possible capacity. Why? Because I still have an identity in that. In order to even think about how many days it's been since I had a drink, I have to think about the fact that I drink or used to. And so, again, I want you to see that there is really power and not and how we identify. So when you shift your identity, so if I were to use the alcoholism, the thought process, recovering alcoholic, rather than saying that, it's just like, yeah, I'm, I don't drink. That's not who I am. Not I'm a recovering alcoholic. There's an identity in that. Yeah, I don't do that. When you shift your identity, everything else from your habits to your environment shifts too. Here's what I love about identity, though. No matter how we grew up, no matter the messages that we've received, no matter the behaviors that we have implemented that have been a part of our life, our identity isn't fixed. This is research supports this. It's flexible, it's fluid. And the more intentional that you are with your identity, the more aligned and powerful your life becomes. Now, you heard me talk about how um, I was once a perfectionist, but not identifying as a recovering perfectionist. I used to hold myself to a truly unrealistic standard. I felt like I had to be perfect in order to be good enough or in order to be loved. And I could never meet it because it was impossible and I'd make mistakes. And then those mistakes were just further evidence that I could never, ever meet that, be that, whatever that is. And yet here I was holding myself to this unrealistic standard. I mean, I can't tell you how often honestly sort of breaks my heart on the inside that I'll have students email me and have issues with a grade that truly they earned. Now, you could argue with me that grading is subjective. Nonetheless, a grade from my perspective that they have earned and want points back here or there in order for them to have an A in the class because an A has a meaning. Sometimes an A has an identity. I have an identity as a perfect student. I have an identity as this or that. And then when that gets shaken, well, it does something internally. I've had many students, and I'm not trying to be hard on them. It's just when you've had a lot, this you see this that really like break down under the pressure of taking too many classes and life happening and all of the things. And then they earn a grade that they don't believe that they deserved. And it's hard. It's hard. I mean, I think I want you to think about you. Have you ever been in a situation in your life when you're like, I identified as blank and it really didn't serve me? It didn't serve me to identify at least as I need to be perfect. I don't know that I could have ever identified as perfect. There's a time in my life when I identified as athlete because I was at that time in my life, I was an athlete. Yeah. But also, athlete might be a role, right? It's so much deeper. I want you to think about really the core of who you are. And this is, man, this podcast is just going to scratch the surface, but my book goes so deep, asking questions throughout. I mean, it's like I have some readers right now, and I had a reader tell me, she was like, I really like I said I wanted to be one of your readers to help you, which was like so nice, right? And then she's like, wow, I just found like if people will really answer the questions, if they'll really do, I call them think throughs in my book as of right now, if they'll really do these, they will find their life is changed. I am growing so much. And that moved me because it truly is powerful. We can shift what's in us by giving focus to it, starting to think about it, and then make changes on it. So, again, I come back to what I said earlier. When you shift your identity, everything else from your habits to your environment shifts too. Now, let's talk about how to do this. Let me just give you some practical steps. First, you want to recognize the voices shaping your current identity. Really ask yourself, whose voice is this? Is it a parent, a teacher? Is it some sort of cultural expectation? Is it a trauma response? I want you to use this awareness to really separate imposed identities from chosen ones. And imposed identities are ones that are put on us that we haven't chosen, that somebody typically outside of us put on to us. So I want you to really just use this to separate imposed identities from chosen ones. Whose voice is this? And then you need to reframe your story. You need to reframe your identity. What story, friend, are you telling yourself about who you are? Are you the failure, the overcomer, the fixer, the too much girl? Narrative psychology calls this autobiographical reasoning. You become the identity that you rehearse. I want you to think about this. You become the identity that you rehearse. So change the script. This is such a huge part of why after a breakthrough session that we really craft the version of the person that they are going to become, because your identity becomes what you rehearse. So instead of saying things like I'm the one who always gets left, you want to try saying something like I'm someone who's learning how to choose people who choose me back. Can you hear how that's so much more empowering? I'm Instead of I'm the one who always gets left, try I'm the one who's learning how to choose people who choose me back. That is a massive shift in thinking. Now, you heard me mention a breakthrough session earlier, and this is where I think that using MER to release emotional baggage is so important, because here's the thing. If you're carrying unresolved beliefs like I'm not enough, it's not safe to be seen, they quietly run the show underneath the surface. I had one running underneath the surface. I'm not good enough. And it would sabotage me, it's not meaning to, along the way. It thought it was protecting me, this belief, and it would sabotage me. And it's got in the way. Mental and emotional release helps you find the root causes of beliefs, clear them at the unconscious level, and make space for something more. It's very hard to build a new identity on top of an old one that's full of shame, fear, guilt, or other negative emotions. It's almost like trying to build an identity on sand rather than on a firm foundation. We want to build up internally the best version of us. And in order to do that, we need a firm foundation, often a clear foundation. Now, what's helpful as you are working on your identity, though different, is clarifying your core values. Our identity is shaped by what matters most to us. So I want you to think about taking the time to write out what your top 5 values are. And then ask yourself, am I living in alignment with these values? If you are living out of alignment, you are exhausted, friend. If you are living in alignment, you'll feel energy, confidence, and peace. I don't know about you, but I would like to live in alignment. You feel me? All right, number 5. You want to future pace the identity that you want to live. Now, you may be going, future pace, what does that even mean? Well, this is an NLP gym. I want you to, as long as you're not driving, or pull over if you are, imagine the future version of you who is grounded, confident, peaceful, and authentic, or whatever other words that you prefer to use. What does she believe? How does she walk into a room? What boundaries does she hold? What does her morning routine look like? Now, close your eyes and visualize her, embody her, really see her, see what she would see, hear what she would hear, feel what she would feel deeply in you. And then choose a small action today that aligns with her. That's how identity is built, through action. We get the picture, and we get the picture because we've thought about it. We've gotten some awareness here of who we want to be, where we want to go. Then we create the picture, and then we take action on it. Friend, I know that you can do that. You can think about it, really process it, get the picture, take action on the picture. And if you can't, I'm here to help you. So I have 5 deep questions that I really want you to think through. I want you to reflect on these things. This is where it's like, this podcast is good, okay? To whatever goodness it is for you. But the questions, if you really think through them, this is where change happens. This is where you get to see a you that maybe you weren't seeing, a you that needed to be uncovered, maybe something that you know that's been there a long time, but really thinking about it brings it to the surface. We need these. I hope that you utilize this. I think this is honestly the most important part of every one of my podcasts. So first, whose voice have I been listening to when it comes to who I am supposed to be? Number 2, what story have I been telling myself about my identity? And is that one I actually want to keep? 3, what beliefs about myself are no longer serving me and need to be rewritten? And number 4, what would I feel if I were to live fully in alignment with my identity? And then number 5, because we can't leave the scene of a decision without a commitment. What action can I take today that aligns with the identity I'm choosing to step into? Bestie, your identity is not something you find. It's something you create. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're not behind. You are becoming ... if you choose to. So let's stop living in reaction to roles, expectations, fear. And friend, together, let's start living in alignment with who we are actually meant to be. If you're ready to go deeper, release the emotional baggage that's keeping you stuck, fully step into your authentic self. Come book a breakthrough session with me. Let's rewrite your story together. Until next week, I am cheering you on. You, friend, were born for this.